Yo guys, what's going on? Robert Warshack here. We're going to be going over the best decks since the Demon Hunter nerf. Unfortunately, it was just the one card that got nerfed, the Window Shopper DK. The weapon went from 3 mana to 4 mana, which stopped everybody from all the Demon Hunter mains. They're all gone now. I don't know what happened to all the Demon Hunter mains, everybody's favorite deck for 2 weeks while it was the best deck. And now all the Demon Hunters have to figure out their next best deck, which is probably going to be one of the decks that we're going to cover here. So it's going to be the legit crazy. This is our Hunter deck that we hit Legend with this past season. This deck is truly insane. It is very easy to play, and it just wins with its insane, very powerful early game of a ton of 1-drops, which propel you into the 2-drops. I don't see how Jungle Gym is still a 2-mana, 3 durability location with deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion. Repeat for each friendly beast you have. This deck plays a lot of friendly beasts, whether it's a bunch of 1-drops, Barrel of Monkeys, Sneaky Snakes. You have Patchwork Pals for a bunch of your animal companions. You have the remote control after your healer attacks, summon a 1/1 hound. You have Ball of Spiders, which puts 3 1/1s on the board. When they die, you get even more beasts to your hand. Once you get like 4, 5, 6 beasts on the board, you go ahead and saddle up, which gives your minions death rattle, summon a random beast that costs 3 or less. So this is kind of like the Soul of the Forest for hunters. It makes it so if your board gets wiped, you have another board to follow up, and all those are beasts anyway, so it's going to work with your location. You have RC Rampage, which is probably one of the best new cards in this deck, which is the 4 mana summon 6 1/1 hounds. Any that can't fit, give the others +1/+1. This card is just insane. And then you have some end game here with draw, so a little bit more burst. The weapon's nasty, and Zilliax, again, your other minions have +1/+1, cost 1 less for each other minion in play. Most of the time, you're going to have a board full of minions, and this is going to juice those guys up, and it's going to cost very little mana. I also made like a deck guide on this deck and went into greater detail and showed a bunch of games with it, so I'll put that link to that video in the description below alongside this deck code. But yeah, this Hunter deck is insane right now. We have the Zucchini Priest, which revolves around skipping your opponent's turn with this new dragon here, the 5 mana 4/6 dragon. Once per game, if you summon 5 of the dragons, take an extra turn. So the core of this deck is to play a bunch of cheap dragons, whether it's like the Gift Wrap Whelp, the Ship's Churigan. You have ways to copy those with Creation Protocol. If you snag that, you've got Pip, which can copy the 1-drops. You also have the Whelp Wrangler, which at the end of your turn, you get a 1/2 Whelp with Taunt that goes to your hand, which you can play. So there's tons of ways to generate dragons from there. Once the Zucchini is active, you can go like Thirsty Drifter, Zucchini, then play Leroy, attack your opponent in the face for anywhere between like 15 to 25 damage. If you have any cards that ever stick on board that can attack and then use Zucchini and you attack again, it's even more of a GG. This basically deck takes advantage of the fact that this deck takes advantage of the fact that you can just skip your opponent's turn, which we know is a very powerful mechanic that we've seen in the past with Hearthstone. And while this deck doesn't look like much, a ton of players brought it to this past Masters Tour and did very, very well with it. I was surprised at how this deck functioned and played versus other decks. I mean, it just has gas for days, and skipping your opponent's turn is good. Heading on over to the Zilliax Rogue. I don't know how Mech Rogue has stooped so low, but this one card is the sole. This is the mech in the deck. It's the 5 mana 2/6 Zilliax, stealth, elusive, poisonous, reborn. At the start of your turn, double this minion's attack. So while it doesn't seem like a big threat here, you go ahead and start magnetizing the mechs to this card, whether you're using the spider or you're using from the scrap heap and getting Wind Fury. From there, this guy is going to have 5, 6, 7 attack. It doubles it. It goes to 12. It doubles it again. It goes to like 24 to 30. You give it Wind Fury. You just win the game. This deck runs stuff like Sap and Quick Pick and Pit Stop. A bunch of cards that basically just help you find your Zilliax so you can play him on 5. However, if your Zilliax dies for however reason, I'm not sure how they would kill him considering he has stealth. And as soon as he gets Divine Shield or more health, it's going to be even harder to kill. Nobody runs Flare anymore. So dealing with this Zilliax is pretty much impossible for your opponent once you juice him up. And then, like I said, you win in 2 turns once he's on the board because you're just going to keep doubling his attack. A pretty degenerate deck, but if you like decks with a singular win condition and you get really good at it, this is a deck people are playing. Moving on to the Plague Death Knight. This is a deck which is really, really good right now because of all of the Reno decks, whether you're playing against like Reno Warrior, Reno Druid, whatever deck runs Highlander cards, this deck shuts it down with stuff like Hell Yeah. And then, of course, all the other cards that put the plagues in the deck, like the weapon, the distress, the down with the ship. For those of you who are late to the expansion, you don't have that many cards yet, or you just haven't opened up that many packs, this deck actually doesn't run any of the new expansion cards in it. I figure this is a great deck to include because not only is it very, very good in this meta right now, it doesn't actually have any of the new cards in it. So if you're a baller on a budget and you just haven't pounced on that new expansion, this is a perfect deck for you. Like I said, the deck is still very, very, very good right now and counters the meta quite nicely. Moving on down to Rainbow Death Knight. You know, after the 47 years they've been pushing the Rainbow Death Knight kind of package, it finally has come together. The deck is a tier 1 deck. This deck is very, very good. Some new inclusions, of course, the Headless Horseman, which is really good. Change your hero power to deal 3, kill your opponent's highest attack minion, gain 5 armor, and then Dr. Stitch, ton of corpses, battle cry, discover 5 3 and 1 cost minion. Each time he dies, he summons the minion as we go down, so he's really hard to deal with. Sticky creature on the board. We also have a lot of really great corpse spenders now, like Corpse Bride, Maul and Paw, and the Corpse Farm. Dealing with large minions has never been easier with stuff like Sticky Grime Walker, which after you summon an undead, give it poisonous. Use this with your hero power. Use this with crop rotation. You can use this with Rainbow Seamstress, which is a brand new card. Battle cry if your deck has started with a Blood, Frost, or Unholy card. Gain Lifesteal, Reborn, and Rush. She's an undead. Very, very, very sick card here. And then if you need draw, we have the Alkali to Death, which is after a friendly undead dies, draw a card. Again, used in tandem with the crop rotation. So insane deck, has a ton of value, has a ton of draw, has a ton of removal. The only thing this deck does last is burst. Everything is minion based in this deck. The only burst that we do, I guess, have is the Necrotic Explosion, which is a 10 mana legendary spell. Deals 6 damage, summon 3 2/2 souls, and it improves each time that you corpse spent. So both getting corpses and then both being able to spend those corpses is how this card's going to get juiced up, and this card will end the game quite a bit because it is very, very powerful and the deck is very, very good. So for those of you who enjoy minion-based decks, this is a fantastic choice for you. Then heading to the Highlander Warrior, this deck is really, really good and very obnoxious right now because of this one card, Deep Miner Bran. If you have no duplicates in your deck, your battle cries trigger twice for the rest of the game. So stuff like your excavate cards trigger twice, making it really easy for you to get to your Ox. Also stuff like Inventor Boom resurrects extra mechs. Of course, you run Zilliax, so you actually summon 4 Zilliax instead of just the 2 Zilliax. Ignis, you get 2 weapons instead of 1. Bomb Boss, you get 6 bombs instead of 3. So you can see this is just a lot of value, a lot of disruption, a lot of annoyance in this warrior deck. However, it is completely shut down by the Plague Death Knight. If you can get 2 of the same plagues into this deck before they play their Bran, but a lot of times it's like a 50-50. But this deck, like I said, is if you can shut down the Highlander, the deck doesn't do anything. However, once Bran gets into motion and the value starts rolling, it's really, really, really hard to beat this deck. They have a lot of armor game and just a lot of value and a lot of disruption. Crazy that Highlander Warrior is so strong. They actually ended up just cutting Odin. They no longer need the Odin win con. They strictly win off of how valuable and how powerful the Deep Miner Bran is, which is kind of absurd. Heading on down to Wheel Warlock, one of my favorite decks this expansion. Really fun meme card, but still a competitive deck. It's the Wheel of Death. 8 mana, destroy your deck in 5 turns, destroy the enemy hero. Normally, destroying your deck is really, really bad, and surviving 5 turns after you've destroyed your deck is really tough. However, when you run cards like Reno, because your deck is empty, you have no cards, of course you have no duplicates, Reno's going to buy you a turn because it clears the board, and then the following turn, they're only going to be able to play 1 minion. So it's going to be kind of tough for that player to win in 1 to 2 turns once you play Reno. Then you go ahead and drop Sargeras. Sargeras' portal can kill everything on the board, so that buys you another turn. And then to survive the 4th turn, you just need to play the Lord of the Opera. He's a 0 mana 15/15 because this card's cost is equal to the amount of cards in your deck. You have no cards in your deck. He's a taunt lifesteal 15/15. If you happen to have the Forge of Wills down, you get basically 2 15/15s out, which if your opponent does not deal with that, it is lethal on board, which is kind of nutty. Also, if you have the symphonies in your hand when you play Wheel of Death, you get to put symphonies in your deck. You draw them right off the top. There's no other cards. That's exceedingly powerful. And on top of that, if you don't have the symphony and you're drawing into fatigue, you have the Fellstring Harp. And every time you normally draw fatigue, you actually gain life instead, which is huge because healing instead of taking damage is quite a swing in the other direction. However, this deck is going to be weak to stuff that does not revolve around the board. This deck has a lot of removal, a lot of disrupt to that. However, against like Sith Mage and Nature Shaman, they don't need minions to win. They can just kill you from their hand. That's where the Speaker Stompers come in, because this disrupts the enemy spells by making them cost 2 more next turn. Really fun Warlock deck here. I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm glad it's one of the good decks, because it's a juicy, fun control deck. And then moving down to a even newer Warlock deck, and that's going to be the Custom Warlock or Pain Warlock. So this deck revolves around dealing damage to your face with stuff like the Maleficent Rook, you know, Battle Cry, attack your hero. It's a 3-mana 5/6. You also run like Blood Treant, which costs health instead of mana. You run Imprisoned Horror, which costs 1 less for each damage you've taken on turns this game. So most of the time, this is going to be a 0-mana 5/5. So on turn, like anywhere between 3 to like 5, you're going to be able to play a ton of creatures onto the board because you're paying your life, or you've already paid your life and they're discounted. You're going to use your location to copy those minions, Cult Neophyte to slow down your opponent, Celestial Projectionist to use on stuff like Molten Giant or Imprisoned Horror to be able to duplicate these guys to make more of them for 0 mana, because again, costs less for each damage your hero has taken. Inevitably, they're going to cost very, very little, because almost everything in this deck kills you. Flame Imp kills you, Spirit Bomb kills you, Geodude kills you, Rock kills you, Blood Treant kills you. Sometimes you can even put the deal damage to yourself on your own Zilliax. Because we go so wide on board and having a little bit of healing is okay, we have the Divine Shield, Taunt, Lifesteal, Rush, costs 1 less for each minion in play. So most of the time it's going to be 1 to 2 mana, and it's going to be able to heal and have Taunt and Lifesteal there, because this deck does put a lot of stuff on the board very, very quickly. But yeah, very interesting Warlock deck to pop up here. And honestly, a lot of the pro players did bring it to this most recent Masters Tour and did perform pretty well with it, which is really interesting given how new of a deck this was right before the Masters Tour and the players feeling comfortable enough to bring it. Because most of the time, if there is like a brand new deck like we see here, which didn't really exist that much before the Masters Tour, a lot of players will be skeptical about bringing it, but a lot of players did bring it and felt pretty comfortable with it, which just means it's a really, really powerful, good deck to play right now that can be picked up and played at a high level quickly, which is perfect for you guys. So with that, those are our best decks right now after the nerf. I'm gonna be real with you guys. This is not one of my favorite Hearthstone metas. I don't know what it is. I just cannot find a deck that I love and can resonate with, and I'm having a really hard time building meme decks, but maybe you guys are having a different experience. Maybe this next mini set kind of broaden the horizons a little bit with what kind of wacky meme decks I can build. But man, it is tough to play Hearthstone for me at the moment. I still love the game, but man, sometimes these metas are just really not for me. And this is definitely one of my not so favorite ones. So with that, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video. Of course, I'm Warshack, and happy whatever the hell day it is.